Hello, my name is Reggie, and I'm with CodeSmith Tools. Today we'll be going over active snippets in Visual Studio using CodeSmith Tools. Now we'll go ahead and open up a Visual Studio console here. We have a generic console application, no extra references or properties. This is as is once you have CodeSmith installed. Now we know about Microsoft Snippets. We can show an example here. Where it'll create a property on the fly. But it's very generic. There's no extra code here. You can go ahead and fill in and change things. Mostly minimizes typing. Now with CodeSmith, you can generate lots of code for properties or for snippets that you've used creating normal CST files. I'll show you a quick example. Using a table property. We can pass in a database table, orders, and then Control E will go ahead and generate. You can also do the same thing by right-clicking on it. I'll show you fast. You can also right-click on the snippet and go to Expand Active Snippets. So here we have an order ID, user ID, date, addresses, names, all the information. One property for every column in that table. We'll go ahead and get rid of that so that we can go back to showing examples. Now I'm going to show you a more complicated example to show off the different aspects of active snippets. If you go to Tools, CodeSmith, Active Snippet Configuration, here you have a list of all the snippets. These are the ones that come included in CodeSmith, as is. You can create your own. We're going to go ahead and use the custom exceptions example. And what you do is you give it an alias, such as the TP that I had typed in, or the CX for this one, which I'll show you in a minute. And then you give it a path to the CST that it's supposed to use to create the snippets. In this case, it's custom exception CST. And there's nothing special about this template. As you can see, this is a normal CodeSmith template. Its properties defined at the top. And down here we have all of the code necessary to create this exception class and generate it from CodeSmith. And bring you back for a moment. You can have a description. This will describe what it does. In this case, this is a custom exception. But more importantly, here you have a preferred extension. And this is because different aliases can be used multiple times, each with a different extension, as you can see here. And active snippets, when it goes to choose which template to use to generate the code, will look at this preferred extension and look at what kind of file it is. So if it's a C# file, it'll look for the CS extension. And if it's a VB file, it'll look for the VB extension. In the case of an ASPX file, in this case, it will take the CS file because there is no extension ASPX, and that's the first one that matches the alias. Now, as you saw when I did the table, I passed in an argument afterwards. I typed in the alias and then an argument. In the case of this one, there are lots of different properties in the template. 2 of them are accepted as arguments, and then they're set up as default properties. Now, some of these arguments may not be necessary, such as I can show you an example. I'll go to CX, I'll type in a name, and if you hit Control E, Control R, it'll give you a list of what the usages are. So we're going to go ahead and type in a class name, and I'll open that up, and here we have an entire exception class created as a result of that template. Now, as you can see, it asks for the arguments, but since the arguments is an optional property in the template, it's not necessary that that argument be passed in, because it will compile. If the template will compile, it will generate the code. Now we'll go back to configuration so I can explain each of these different aspects of the configuration. Going back to CX, this argument mapping, you can pick and choose which arguments you want to pass in. So you can type in an argument message, or we can remove that. We can flip which order they happen in, so that now the argument gets passed in first and the class name gets passed in second. It's not really what we want, because the arguments is optional while the class name is not. And then here we have default property mappings. So if I want to set the arguments to a default, we'll say name string and age equals int. We'll go ahead and set that automatically. So now if we come back in here and I say test exception and generate, we get the exception, and it has two variables that are being passed in as arguments, a name and age, as you can see. Now, if I go back and I decide that I want the arguments to be something else, and we'll say, we'll go with first name, string, last name equals string, and we generate, you can see that the argument passed in is overwritten the default. And this allows you to make changes for special circumstances. Now what happens during generation is that first the default properties are set, and then any properties that are set by arguments being passed in are set so that any defaults are overwritten. Then the isValid method is called on the template. Assuming the template is valid, it will generate the code. Now, these arguments that get passed into the active snippets are all I property serializable, and that is the interface that they use. So that if you have your own, you can use those as arguments to your own active snippets. In the case of the CodeSmith ones, they all have a string method that will take in a string and create the property. In this case, it creates a collection. And that is active snippets in a nutshell. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can contact community.codesmithtools.com. And once again, my name is Reggie. Have a nice day.